Hello viewers and welcome back to the Dukascopy TV studio. I'm Ben Jones and joining me today to discuss Islamic finance is John Sandwick from Safa Investment Services. John, thank you very much for coming in again.
Thank you, Ben.
So if we can talk straight away with Islamic finance, it covers a lot of ground from retail to investment banking. But what do you feel are the main areas that relate to Swiss banking?
Well, it's good to remember that banking itself is a very broad definition. I like to think of banking as standing on 5 pillars. You have retail banking, you have corporate banking, you have investment banking, you have brokerage and trading banking, and you have asset management banking. And that pretty much encompasses all of financial intermediation. We look at Islamic banking in the first 4 categories, and we've seen that Islamic banking has made enormous strides, enormous gains in achieving high degrees of efficiency and world standards. So Islamic retail banking is almost in every sense equivalent to conventional retail banking for consumers, with credit cards and overdraft line of credit and auto loans and everything you can imagine. Corporate banking, investment banking, brokerage and trading, all of those areas of finance have, in the Islamic space, have achieved a very, very high degree of efficiency. But when we go to that 5th sector, that 5th pillar, asset management banking, there has been almost no progress made at all. And that's a shame because asset management is the body of activity that provides the funds to buy shares in an IPO. It's the place where you get the source of money to buy bonds, to buy real estate funds, to buy anything. In other words, asset management may be one of the most important areas of financial intermediation. And so it's not good, obviously, it's not a social good or an industry good that asset management, Islamic asset management, has not evolved. That's relevant to Switzerland, specifically because Switzerland is home to arguably one of the greatest communities of asset managers in the world. Switzerland has evolved a national infrastructure for asset management which has almost no comparison anywhere. And when you talk about private wealth management and Swiss private banking, I mean, it's legendary. But there's another side to that, and that's institutional wealth management, where Swiss asset managers are some of the world's greatest at managing pension fund money, endowment money. So it's no surprise that Switzerland has something like $3.5 trillion of assets under management from outside Switzerland. We calculate, and we're not sure these calculations are perfectly correct, but we think it's fairly easy to say there's at least $200 billion of Muslim-owned money managed in Switzerland. And of course, given the very tiny Muslim community in Switzerland, we know that almost all of that is from abroad. As Switzerland faces challenges in maintaining its global brand as a world center of asset management, it has to look at new ways to develop and maintain market share.
Okay, so you have often described the Islamic asset management as the orphan child of Islamic finance. Can you explain why this is and why you feel that fewer resources have been put into this area of Islamic finance?
Well, I think part of that has to do with the cultures and where we're doing business, places like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, places that have generated enormous wealth, but also places like Malaysia and Indonesia and Egypt. You know, Muslims constitute about a quarter or a little bit more of the world's population. At least 1.2 billion people on this planet are Muslim. And while we can say there's a lot of poor Muslims in places like Bangladesh or Nigeria, we also know that there's places where there's a high degree of wealth generation, places like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, but also in places like Egypt. You know, few people know that Mercedes-Benz far outsells cars in Egypt than they do in Saudi Arabia. So a lot of wealth generation in places people really don't think too often about. Islamic wealth may constitute, of the $85 trillion we see under professional management worldwide today, Muslim wealth may be $3 or $4 trillion of that. Now, if you look at the lifestyle of a Muslim, and really most Muslims pray 5 times a day. Most Muslims worship their God. Most Muslims believe in the principles of the Sharia. And if you have a client who qualifies as a Muslim, almost without doubt, he wants his assets managed according to the principles that he lives with every day of his life. That would be, of course, the Sharia. The Sharia itself is no mystery. The Sharia is a set of rules and guidelines for living in a community in harmony with your family and your community and your nation. And the Sharia essentially reflects the same principles and values that you find in other faiths, for example, Christians and Jews and Hindus. Don't harm your community, don't harm your family, and promote good. So all of us can share the same values of Sharia, and adding Sharia to the asset management function is not rocket science. It's simple. There is no controversial elements of it. You can construct model portfolios according to Sharia standards using an existing inventory of Sharia-compliant securities and come up with very, very proficient and efficient asset allocations.
And finally, with all of that, what are the risks to Switzerland as a global wealth management centre? Do you feel that Muslim-owned assets could move to another banking centre?
Well, I think there's a substantial risk of that. Muslims are like everybody else. They want to get the best value for their money. And when it comes to any kind of purchasing decision, they're going to evaluate and establish what is the best for them. Right now, I see a lot of Swiss private bankers are descending on Riyadh and Jeddah and Abu Dhabi and Kuwait, selling hedge funds, selling derivatives. And, you know, one is a lot of conventional investors have backed off from those asset classes anyway. And two, I think when you visit these countries, when people spend time to try to understand the local culture, the local tastes and preferences, there is a clear and unambiguous trend to live a life of Sharia. The well-known global public relations company Ogilvy has a subsidiary called Ogilvy Noor. A couple of months ago, they finished a global Muslim consumer survey. And they found that 80% of all Muslims they surveyed in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in the United States, in Western Europe, and of course in the Arab countries, 80% of the Muslim consumers would choose a brand of shampoo or food product or banking services that gave them an authentic Sharia feeling, that they felt that the product or service delivered to them had respect for their principles, for their values. And so I think the first person who goes into the market with an authentic Sharia-compliant asset management, wealth management service is going to easily take away market share from well-known Swiss brands that don't have this.
Okay, John, thank you very much for coming in again.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Ben.
And thank you, viewers, for watching. Make sure you stay tuned to Dukascopy TV for more updates and exclusive interviews. But for now, goodbye.